Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to one more episode of the Mini Diaries. It's been quite a while since I last had an update on the channel about both Bob and I, and today is finally the day I'll be doing so. Bob, apparently, is back together and happily running for about a month and a half now, and I'm actually on the road for about a week and a half now. So it's time I gave you guys an update of where I am and what's been happening with this trip of mine to Thailand. First things first, here's a classic Mini that needs to manage 13,000 kilometers all the way from Thessaloniki, Greece to Bangkok, Thailand. A feat in itself. So I had to make sure that Bob would be able to manage this trip, so the plan was for me, shove him in the garage, completely dismantle him, and check every single bolt, nut, piece, part, anything that's on the car that could go wrong, and ensure that the car would make it. So I started from the rear of the car, literally from the rear bumper, moving forward, and I was checking everything on the car. Wheels, bearings, brakes, suspension, cones, kingpins, the chassis itself, anything you can imagine. And of course, there were too many things that had to be dealt with. In the 20 years almost that I've owned Bob, there were certain things that I had never ever done. I'd never done such a thorough repair on the car, and the challenge of this task was that not only did I have to do a repair, I had to custom design and incorporate features to the car so that this trip would be as easy, so to speak, or as trouble-free as possible. So the first thing that had to come apart was the rear chassis. Again, I had never done that before, and sure enough, when I took it out, it was an old, filthy, rusty, gunked up item that, to my surprise, unfortunately was rotten as well in certain parts. So there were quite a few repairs needed there. I had to have it sandblasted, reinforced with 3mm thick galvanized steel plates, repair the rotted and rusted parts, prime it, paint it, install it back into the car, get my new bushings in, brand new shock absorbers, new suspension cones, check my brakes, brake shoes, brake springs. I needed both brake cylinders at the rear because they were both seized, because the car was basically abandoned in a yard for 2 years since my brother's death, and for 2 years because I was not in the mood of doing much with Bob. So there was a lot that had to be done. As I was working on the car and time would go by, the sheer size of the adventure that laid ahead of me started to actually kick in, and it kind of stressed me because I went into, and I don't know if that's a foul circle or not, but I literally left nothing, absolutely nothing, to chance. I checked, repaired, cleaned, scrubbed, painted, primed, pretty much everything that's on this car. Once the back was completed, I started moving forward. I had to check electrics. There were a million things going on with my actual steering, so I needed a brand new steering rack. I needed to clean and service my steering column. New bushings were required. My turn signal switch stock was broken as well, so I had to repair that. Endless details that had to be tended to in order to satisfy, I don't know, my anxiety, so to speak, my worries and my concerns about what could go wrong. The challenge with the project of putting Bob back on the road, was that in the years before Bob ended up in the yard, abandoned, left there, rotting basically, fully exposed to the elements, rain, shine, whatever, I was very much struggling financially, so I really didn't have the funds or the means to properly maintain Bob. So he was slowly but steadily falling apart. And after I was done with my second simulation trip that I went to Mykonos and back, on my way back, Bob basically told me, George, I had enough. I cannot be driven anymore, and I had several failures happening at the same time. An alternator failed, my clutch pump failed. I had an issue with my brakes, so I started leaking fluid. A lot of things were going on. So I figured, enough's enough, let him be, and you'll find the time in the future, collect the parts, save up money, and put him back together. That time finally came in October 2024, when I started repairing everything. And of course, there was more to that than meets the eye. All in all, it's been a challenge. And the actual time required to complete all that was setting a 3-month target to complete the car was extremely aggressive. And it was aggressive, not that it cannot be done. It could be done in 3 full months doing nothing else, just that, preparing a car for a 13,000 kilometer long trip. In 3 months, provided you know what you're doing, it can be done. The challenge I had was that since I was on a sabbatical, and since the agreement with my company was that I was going to take 6 months off to close all my business and loose ends in Greece before I moved on to Thailand, there were so many more things that I actually had to do, except for fixing Bob. Since I was going to be in Thailand, I didn't want to leave, let's say, open cases behind. And one thing that really was a burden for me was the fact that the building that I own, a flat, for which I'm a caretaker, was in a horrible state and it was falling apart, and it had reached the point that pieces from the walls were falling, collapsing on the pavement, on the road, and it became a public risk. So I had to take the steps to repair an entire 9-floor building. Not by myself, of course. I was the one managing it, making sure that I would find all the owners, do the meetings, get the approvals, get the signatures, get permits in place, find the people who would actually carry out the job, inspect the job as it was being done and carried out through the months. That thing lasted 5 months in total, from day one in early October when it started till late January when it finished. It was an absolute nightmare. It occupied, sometimes I had to be in the building running up and down for maybe 10 days in a row, right? So that chipped away time and brain power from the project of the mini diaries, of getting Bob back to shape. As if that wasn't enough, I had to help my aunt do renovation with her summer house. So there I was, working on Bob, running around with the building being repaired, and painting, plastering, doing whatever with my aunt's house. So I ended up putting too many things on my plate, and yeah, that also took time. So things got kind of out of hand time-wise, and I ended up being in late January with Bob almost finished, the building finished, the summer house almost finished as well, and kind of like things were falling back in place. That was one side to the project. And why do I say there was one side to the project? Because in going from one place to the other, from Greece to Thailand, there are so many countries I have to cross. And there's certain administrative and logistic things that have to be taken care of. First thing first, visas. I had to go through, well, my planned route is from Greece to Turkey, to Iran, to Pakistan, to India, to Myanmar, to making it to Thailand. All of those countries are a story on their own. First of all, just to be able to drive through Iran, Pakistan and India, I needed to sort out what is called the carnet de passage. The carnet de passage is an official document, is an international document, and it's a certification that you will enter a country and exit that country with the car without selling it. And for this reason, you have to pay a deposit to whatever is the relevant organization in your respective country that ensures that you will not sell the car along the way, and tax income will be lost to whichever country you could possibly sell the car into. So the carnet de passage in Greece used to be issued by a company called Filpa, which unfortunately went bust. So I could no longer do it at home from Greece, and I had to figure out a way to do it, which I eventually did, and that would be through ADAC in Germany. The cost of a carnet de passage is mind-blowing, to say the least. For a car, if I was able to do it in Greece, it would cost me 3,000 euros. Yes, 3,000 euros. Since Philpa is out of business and they no longer issue carnet de passage, I had no way but doing it through Germany and ADAC, which would cost me 5,000 euros, 2,000 euros more. Mind you, 2K is more or less my costs on fuel, and it's actually way more than that, to get me from Greece to Thailand. So that money, boom, is gone just like that. It's easy to say that and explain that, hey, this company and da-da-da, this is the carnet de passage. The actual hours taken in researching all the information, in sorting out how to get a carnet de passage, was also time taken away or invested into the project of preparing yourself and a car to do a global road trip. I would need a carnet de passage for Iran, for Pakistan, and for India. And before I paid that money, which is, mind you, that's a deposit. You pay 5,000 euros, and once you return with your car and all the relevant stickers on the booklet of the carnet de passage, they return you the money. Still, 5,000 euros is 5,000 euros, and it's quite an investment, at least for someone with a budget like mine. So I had to make sure that I wouldn't have any issues with all the countries I had to travel through to make it all the way to Thailand. And I started checking things kind of like the beginning of the route and the end of the route, and then just closing the gap in between. The first main obstacle was Myanmar. Now, Myanmar is a country that's been troubled for quite a few years. They do have quite a nasty civil unrest, so there's no way for me, well, I could, but it would be pushing it way too much to enter from the borders of East India into Myanmar. So I figured, okay, I'll skip Myanmar, I'll drive all the way to Kolkata, load Bob on a container and ship him to Bangkok from there, which is very doable. Several companies doing that, and the actual cost for me would have been about 1,700 euros to get Bob in a container, put him on a ship, and have him landing in Bangkok, Thailand. I couldn't enter India. India, for some reason, well, not for some reason, declined to give me a visa for entering by road with my car, because I would enter from Pakistan. Now, apparently, well, we all know there's this kind of beef between India and Pakistan. To my utter surprise, that beef is much more intense than one would actually anticipate. And much as I tried, and mind you, it took me 2 months of emails and phone calls to the Embassy of India in Athens, unfortunately to no avail. They declined a visa and they declined me entry because, and they openly told me so, just because you're coming to Pakistan, we will make it very difficult for you. And that's exactly what they did. And the challenge was that I had a very limited amount of time to make it to Thailand from Greece, because I figured I would easily need 3 months to do this trip kind of comfortably, and 2 months would be rushing through everything, but it could still be done in 2 months. With all the delays with India, I had to find me an alternative route, and that alternative route at the beginning felt like a complete dead end, because China is not a way to go around. China doesn't allow entry to foreigners with their own vehicles. You're only allowed to drive in China if you have an actual Chinese driving license, and if you get a permit or permission, so to speak, from each province you're going to drive through, from the local authorities, so that they allow you to drive through as a foreigner with your car. So it felt like it was a no-go at the beginning. Again, that was time in researching, sending emails, talking to people, da-da-da-da. All those things, again, take so much time. So there's a huge aspect of, and actually, to be very honest with you, the total time for this project in preparing Bob and being on the road is split almost equally. 50% of my time went into actually working on Bob and making him roadworthy for the trip, and 50% of my time was just administrative work, maybe emails, maybe phone calls, maybe research on the web on trying to figure out how in God's name to make it through those countries to my final destination. Eventually, China is an option because what they do is, yes, they have all those restrictions in place, but tourist agencies take care of that. So for a fee, and quite a hefty fee actually, they will do that for you. They will actually give you a Chinese driver's license. They will give you Chinese driver's license plates. They will sort all the paperwork. They will get all the permits from all the provinces you will have to be driving through and sort it out for you. It's a significant cost, right? It could range anywhere from 4K all the way up to 8K, 8,000 euros for a solo traveler to go through China. Because mind you, doing a detour, because that's exactly what it would be, my fastest route is through Iran, Pakistan, India, container, Thailand. Going through China as an alternative will add an extra almost 5,900 and something kilometers to my route, which is, it's a lot of miles, right? So it is an option and it isn't an option at the same time. Too many miles, it's an exorbitant cost. So it all kind of felt like, how am I going to do this? I ended up sending several emails, talking with different companies, travel agencies. I found a couple that would accept me. So it seemed like, though it would be freaking expensive, I actually found a way to enter through China, somewhere on any west border of China, drive through, diagonally down, all the way south, make it to Laos, and from Laos, enter Thailand. So a route was now possible. Explaining all those things on YouTube is one thing, going through them is another. The beauty of it all was that when I started, I finally said, okay, that's how I'm going to go through Turkey, go through Iran, keep going north, enter Tajikistan, and then through China, you're going to go into Laos, and then Thailand, and I'm just sitting there, Bob's done, everything runs, he works perfectly. I did my test drives, I clocked about maybe 800 kilometers in Greece, and I actually really pushed the car to ensure that there would be no early surprises on the route, and Bob behaved perfectly well. So I'm like, I'm more or less ready to go, and I'm there, Bob's fully packed, about a couple of weeks before I left, or I was due to leave. And I'm there checking my paperwork, and I'm looking at my car registration, and I realized, to my utter horror, that the chassis number is stamped wrong on the papers of the car. And that was a disaster, because every time you go through the borders, the first thing they will check on the car is the VIN number. So my VIN number ends with the letter B for Bob. And someone back in 1981, when this Mini was imported in Greece, mistook that B for an 8. Of course I freaked out, started emailing, trying to figure out a way, how to do this. Bob was imported in western Greece, in a city called Yanina, so I had to somehow contact the DMV of Yanina. They had to find the files of the car from 1981, retrieve them, confirm that the VIN number was the one that I was telling them was, and then make the change online, and then I will be done. In the process of doing that, correcting the VIN number, when we were done, the guy was, why all this fast? Why do you want to change your VIN number? Who cares? Who's going to know? And I told him, yeah, I'm planning on driving abroad. And he said, oh, you can't leave Greece. And I'm like, why? Because you got 1981 license plates and you just can't cross the borders. Freak out moment again. There I go running again, trying to figure out how to change my license plates into the new modern type where they have the blue stamp and the GR mark on them and da-da-da-da-da. And they told me that was going to take me an entire month. Mind you, it was I think it was something like 23rd, 24th of January. And I'm like, I'm completely screwed. I'm never going to make it in time if it takes me 1 month to get new license plates in place. In my utter desperation, I started talking with people. And my cousin Jimmy told me, bro, don't worry, there's this guy I know, he's a cowboy, just show up, pay him a fee, he'll do it for you in 3 days. Sure enough, 3 days, I had my license plates in my hands. And I was finally ready to go. I'm walking down the street, license plates in hand, on my way to the garage, and the phone rings, and they called me from the company that I was to work for in Thailand to announce that the plans have changed. They're no longer opening an office in Thailand, which means there's no job for me. And that means there was no destination for me. I spent about maybe 5 minutes in complete panic, frustration, anger, and then I was like, I no longer have time constraint in me. I no longer have time pressure. I can do this at my own free time. And will I do it? I most certainly will. But all of that is a different story for a different episode.